I am ambiguously brown. And for all the other brown people out there, like there's a lot of benefits to being brown, but nobody wants to talk about that. All we want to talk about is how much white people suck. But that's okay. And the most important pattern to keep in mind with human thinking is that in the lack of information, in an absence of information, in an information vacuum, people assume the worst. And when CIA doesn't really care about your life, the government doesn't care about your life, you are a servant to the people.
Hi there. This is another episode from The Vault. Former CIA covert officer Andrew Bustamante. In this episode, Andrew reveals what training at the farm is really like, how spies use R.I.C.E, reward ideology, coercion, ego, to recruit assets, why most CIA officers burn out after 10 years, the truth about JFK files and Cuba's spy network, and why CIA's own recruitment ads made him cringe. After you're done, let me know what you think about the CIA. Are they a force for good or something more nefarious? And we are live. Today we have a special guest, CIA covert operator. I have to question his background. Anytime I see a bare bulb over a CIA agent, I start to sweat. Andrew Bustamante, how are you doing?
I'm good, Eric. It's good to be here. Technically, you're not the one under this bare bulb. You do have a little, a very classy little bulb above your head, I see. So,
oh yes, that is the bookshelf from IKEA atmosphere. $100 from IKEA, like dressed it up. I used to have just the painting on the wall and then like my show, like almost like a towel type of thing hanging, and it was sort of warped down just like any YouTuber whatsoever. So that actually is a gigantic Hollywood level improvement compared to what I had in the past. And that light in the back is supposed to supposedly draw the camera to give the better depth or whatever.
There you go. Yeah, and my bare bulb is just everywhere I travel, I end up signing up for different co-work spaces, and co-work spaces have just become like they have to look trendy. So somehow we live in a world now where bare bulbs are both used for interrogation and for setting the trend in a very classy joint.
Okay, well, I was thinking that you were just letting us know if the chat gets out of hand that people.
When the light goes out, that's when bad things happen. Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. All right, so we're going to jump back into the past. Very interesting hearing about you. You were born in Arizona, and I'm guessing Tucson because your father worked for IBM.
No, actually, so my father died when I was very young. My birth father, and he was an Air Force, just an Air Force enlisted person. And my mom and my dad met at is it the Luke Air Force Base? Is that the one in Arizona? It was a long time
Davis
ago.
Monson.
Davis Monson might have been it. Actually, that sounds right. So yeah, but that was back in like 1979, and then I was born in 1980, and my father died just a few months after I was born.
Oh, okay.
But my stepdad, my stepdad who raised me, spent 35 years working for IBM.
Okay, and you know what IBM was called? Because I grew up in Tucson. I was born and raised in Tucson. That's how I know this, and IBM was nicknamed "I've been moved." And it literally was that. So it'd be like I had some friends from Germany, I had friends from other place, and it was literally IBM was just moving people in and out of town.
That's IBM is what took us from Tucson to Pennsylvania, where I grew up. So that makes perfect sense.
There you go. So you were on the way out. So now your language story is interesting. I always like to talk about language. I don't know why. Probably because I suck at it. I took French and it was awful, and I managed to fail out of lowest level French. Watching Steve Martin routines probably didn't help, but either way, I like the whole concept of the polyglot, but apparently you're not a polyglot. But it's weird because you grew up speaking Spanish until you were 5 as your first language, but then converted completely to English and forgot most of your Spanish, correct?
Yeah. It's one of those, it's strange. Spanish is a language that I understand more than I can speak. So
Okay.
it's
So you still have an intuitive
yeah, and it's
feel?
especially when I have my mother or my grandmother yelling at me in Spanish, I really understand it well then.
Oh, I mean, maybe that was it. Is I was getting formal training. If I got more curse words like Viva Fries is out here in the audience, and he speaks French and all flavors of it. Um, Maybe I would have remembered more. I don't know.
So and it's funny. So I'm going to go ahead and put myself on a limb, and I'm like the whole polyglot movement
Hmm.
is it's kind of a joke, right? So anybody out there, especially Europeans who speak more than one language, they will be the first ones to tell you you lose fluency rapidly when you
Hmm.
stop using a language. It's not like you can stop talking even if you have French and German and Spanish, right? Very common combinations to have if you're in Europe, or Portuguese and French and Swedish or something like that, right? Especially in the Norwegian countries where everybody speaks three languages
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
primary school. They all know that as soon as you stop actively practicing a language, it starts to get processed, starts to get indexed. The cognitive term is it gets indexed into your back brain, into a part of your brain that's not actively being used. Your fluency goes down, your language reflexes, your ability to rapidly converse, it all decreases significantly. So whenever I see like YouTube videos or advertisements for polyglots, it's one of those things where I'm like, if your career is just selling people on the idea that you're a polyglot, then you're using three or four languages and you're kind of always using the same languages, the same taglines, the
Sure.
same sales pitch in multiple languages. So you look really fancy. But when you're
I,
forced to survive in a language, you master that language and your other ones take a back seat.
that makes sense. I guess the one person I know who's legitimately, I think, a polyglot in the sense of four languages is a guy, Jan Aluga. He's a podcaster, and he lives in Switzerland, and he lives in Italian Switzerland. So there's the three languages: Italian, French, and German, and English.
Mm.
And he's constantly pinging around in all of them.
Yeah.
So
So
I
does
could see that maybe.
Yeah, and I would be very curious to have a conversation with him and see just how deep his knowledge is in specialized vocabulary in any
Good
one of those
question.
languages. Right? You might be able to have an everyday conversation about groceries and fuel and picking up the kids from the school, but are you going to be able to have a conversation about politics? Are you going to be able to have conversations about economy? Are you going to have a conversation about
Right.
military history
Can you
in
read?
in four different languages? Exactly.
And can you read? I mean, that's a big one too, because speaking and reading are two different activities, right?
Yeah, it's true, and oftentimes speaking is the one that's the hardest because you're
Hmm.
you're putting together a completely original idea as you create the language, the sound with your mouth. So many people are better at reading than they are at speaking.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, with your background, and you've talked about it before, that you have sort of I don't know how to put it, an appearance where it's difficult to tell from where you originate,
It's
and it makes
that's
me
said
think.
like a very sensitive white guy. Thank you, Eric. I I I am ambiguously brown, and for all the other brown people out there, like there's a lot of benefits to being brown, but nobody wants to talk about that. All we want to talk about is how much white people suck. But that's okay, Eric. Yeah, I am ambiguously brown. You don't
And
know
I
if
suck.
I'm
I got you.
you don't know if I'm Pakistani or if I'm, whatever, Latin American or whatever else.
Well, I wanted to go into that and see if that helped you. I've had like a Mike Levine on. Mike Levine is a DEA legendary agent. Thousands of people arrested, and he worked all the levels of the cartel. And he's a Jew from the Bronx,
Mm,
but he played because he grew up with Puerto Ricans, so he knew like street level, Puerto. I'm going to say Puerto Rican, even though yes, technically it's Spanish, but there is a difference because I took care of Cubans.
mm,
And when I did that, I learned that Mexican Spanish and Puerto Rican Spanish and Dominican, and it's very different. And
yeah.
it's kind of like comparing a Southerner to somebody from Boston. There's very extreme differences in the dialect,
Yeah, yeah,
so to
yeah.
speak. But did this help you that nobody could quite place you? And how did you utilize it? Because your language was Chinese.
Yeah, so it's a great question, right? So for all of those beautifully, liberal people out there who want a world that's fair and just,
Mhm.
Outside of the United States, the world is a racist place, period. And they don't, and there's no like, it's okay. It's okay that it's a racist place. It's okay that my Mexican grandmother actively talks trash about every other race except Mexicans, right? White
Mhm.
people, African American people, Indian people, she doesn't care. And that's the way it is everywhere in the world. Like the whole prejudice that we fight so hard against in America is alive and well in the rest of the world. If anything, it's what makes us kind of the joke, the butt of a lot of jokes are overseas. So for me, by looking ambiguously brown, right, and not looking like an American, it made it very easy for people to not assume I was American. So that was excellent for operational purposes. Nobody ever looked at me and thought off the top of their head, that guy's American. As long as I kept my mouth shut, my eyes kind of down, and I just walked, they just blended in, they would usually assign me whatever derogatory, prejudiced, uh, ethnicity was dominant in their culture. So, whether I was in the Middle East and they assumed I was Pakistani, or whether I was in Jordan and they assumed that I was, Jewish, or whether I was in Latin America and they assumed that I was Chilean, it didn't matter. They found whatever dominant prejudice they had and they just assumed that was me. And it made it very easy to never be memorable.
Now, okay, this is an interesting conversation on this too, because I have a horrible memory. I had a MI6 undercover operative, and we were talking about it. You are treading a unique line though when you're on a mission, right? Like you just said, being nondescript, not being noticed, to be under the radar. However, you're targeting a person or persons, and you have to be extremely attractive to them. So how do you cross that paradigm where you're absolutely boring and non-memorable to everybody around you, save that person, and you're super special?
Yeah, it's a very astute observation on your part, Eric, right? So the big thing is a lot of it boils down to non-sensory inputs. So when it comes to sensory inputs, your five senses, the way you look, the way you smell, the way you sound, right? Those are things you want to blend in with. It's not until you start getting into non-sensory inputs, which are things more like conversation, like information is a
Mhm.
non-sensory input. It has nothing to do with your five senses. You can take in information through your five senses, but the information itself is non-sensory. So when you find the target that you're trying to speak to, you've been studying that target for a long time. You know that
Yeah.
target fairly well. So you know what to say or what to show them or what to suggest. You know what kind of questions to ask. You know what topics to show an interest in, so that individual target is extremely interested in you as an individual. So now the other 900 people in the room, or the other 900 people that saw you that day, the other 10 people in the restaurant, they don't know you from Adam, and you're not memorable, and they don't care. But the person sitting across from you knows that you like the same soccer team, you drink your scotch the same way, you've been to the one country that they have all their life wanted to travel to, right? And they
Mm.
and they connect with you on those non-sensory inputs, and that's what makes you memorable to them and completely unobservable to everybody else.
Okay, and so that's when you start getting into your direct dialogue then, to where you
Correct.
have
Yeah.
it now. Is that almost like and I'm trying to get it right, but is that like a mechanism? Like if you know this is my intention, so all things that I say or all things that I think lead to this potential goal, versus I don't necessarily have a goal, so I'm meandering.
Correct. There's reactive, and then there's proactive conversation, or rather active and reactive conversation. Reactive conversation is what most of us have. You say
Mhm.
something, I react to it with something else. You react to whatever I just said, right? Interviews are the definition, generally speaking, of reactive conversations.
Well, we're not
Wherever,
through this one yet.
but a well executed interview is a perfect example of an active conversation, or what we on the inside call a deliberate dialogue. You know what you want to talk about. So I'm going to kind of bore you guys with some technical terms, right? But if you know what you want to talk about, and that's basically your finish line. You want to get
Mhm.
some, in an interrogation, you want to get them to admit to the crime. So then you build backwards. You reverse engineer what you're going to discuss during that interrogation, and you have these almost like waypoints along the way. You want to get them to admit that they were in a certain place. Then you want to get them to admit that they knew a certain person. Then you want to get them to admit that they had a certain feeling about that person. So you build these waypoints along the way. When it's all said and done, it's not a reactive conversation like two people meeting at the end of the driveway. It's a very active conversation. You have this large map built of all the waypoints on the way to the final end goal, whether it's somebody admitting that they were the murderer, or whether it's somebody saying, yes, they'll spy for the United States, or whether it's somebody agreeing to do a dead drop and leave you a thumb drive with secrets to nuclear codes. That's all a deliberate dialogue that you have with a specific objective in mind, and you bounce it against this map, this conversation map of how you're going to get to your end goal.
Okay, not to be a pain in the ass, but I like to do it anyway. That's an interrogation, but that's only one form of a dialogue or a conversation, because I have a lot of different people who like run Sears School or whatever, that there are two different things. There's interrogations and then there's intelligence gathering.
Right.
So in your case, I imagine you might have talked to people you wouldn't necessarily want to bring home to your birthday party.
Right.
But that didn't matter. And it didn't matter if they committed particular crimes in the past. What did matter is, do they have information that could help you later?
Right.
Is that a different conversation than an interrogation where you're actually trying to get the truth?
Yeah. So the principles are the end objectives and the environment are different, but the methodology is very similar. So with an interrogation, you have control of the environment. You have, I mean, the person's there. They're either apprehended or they're detained, and there's some expectation on their part that they will not be released until the interrogation is over. So they want to cooperate, or you can anticipate that they want to at least seem like they are cooperating. So that's you're right. Interrogation
still they have a limited product that you're selling them. It's very limited, very specific,
and they know that all they have to do is say yes. And then when they're allowed to leave to go get their wallet, they just never have to come back. But yeah, there you go. But it's still a deliberate dialogue. It's still a conversation map. There's still an objective. There's still a purpose. Intelligence gathering is the same thing, except you don't have control over the environment. You don't have a closed audience that you can count on. If you piss the person off, they just get up and walk out of the restaurant. If you're boring, they're going to start watching the TV and ignore you altogether. All of a sudden, you run the risk of becoming just as forgettable as everybody else because you screwed something up. But you still want to have that same deliberate dialogue, that same conversation map. Your objectives are different. You're not looking for an admission of guilt. You're just looking for a next meeting. No, go ahead. So I was actually sitting with a friend of mine who's still active on the inside just a few weeks ago. And we were joking because he sees me come across, his YouTube playlist or whatever else. And I know that he doesn't even exist right on the social sphere of things. And we were laughing because in the real world, in the not the James Bond world, but in the real world, about 97% of cases fail. And nobody knows that, right? All that effort, all those spies out there trying to get information, 97% of what we do fails. Because you talk to somebody and they're just not amenable to spying. It's not the right time. They're not in the right mood. They don't have enough time. They're under observation. They're just nervous. Like, making a spy is not an easy thing. All the intel that we have,
they're liars and snitches, and you can't trust them anyway.
Exactly. They produce something that isn't really intelligence. But yeah, the fail rate is massively high. And if anything, the hard part is becoming accustomed to that failure rate. It's why Everyday Spy, one of the things I try to teach people all the time is not to fear failure. You should fear not trying. You shouldn't fear failing on every attempt.
Okay, and I should put this out right now. A lot of my audience does not love the CIA. I told you that ahead of time. So, like right here, and I don't know if we can get into a lot of it because I think your career spanned like 2007 to 2014. So I would probably be able to talk to you about, let's say, the Kennedy years and speculation as to now. But obviously, I can't talk to you about the window that you do know something directly. But we can surmise from publicly available information on other years. Is that a fair?
Yeah, I think that's as fair as it can be, right? CIA is not going to come out and reject or deny anything because that would just suggest that there's credibility to it.
Yes, and that actually does bring into a question that took me by surprise because I was talking to Mike Levine about it. I don't know if you have ever read up on the theories about, obviously Iran-Contra, drug running into South Central LA, and Freeway Ricky Ross, the reporter Gary Webb, who kind of revealed all of it, but then died later of a very odd looking self-termination. This is YouTube, so you have to be very careful what you say of 2 bullets in the back of the head. Anyway, but and that's always looked terribly, terribly suspect. However, Michael Levine, who despises the CIA, pointed out, he said that he did not think that the CIA did that or did anything to him because, and I'm coming to an end, I promise, because the man had already been ruined. His career was devastated. He was mocked. Nobody believed anything with him. His career was in tatters. He was a complete joke. And he said, why would they even bother? He was already destroyed. Do you have any thoughts about that?
So I don't know a lot of details about the individual or about I tend to look at all the conspiracy theories, all the theories about what CIA did or didn't do, and I kind of take it all with a grain of salt, because CIA is one of the organizations in the United States that has authorities you would not imagine. They can do basically anything they have to do if it can draw a direct line to national security.
Technically, they're not supposed to do it on our soil, though.
Well, that's the big caveat. Isn't about geography. It isn't about geography. The big caveat is about the citizens' national identity. Exactly. So they're not supposed to do it against an American citizen. Now, if it's an American citizen who's also an active terrorist posing an active threat against national security, now they can go to a court and they can get the kind of court approved whatever they need to do whatever they need to do to maintain national security. That's the thing about authorities. Different authorities exist with different intelligence community partners, and that's what forces them to cooperate, because when they cooperate, they have a wider range of authorities that they can execute against. So in this case, do I believe that at some point some secret court gave CIA authority to smuggle guns? Sure. Drugs? Sure. I mean, people, whatever else. Like it's not beyond the realm of reality. I know in my time, anything that we could give an asset to keep them going in terms of being a productive intelligence providing asset, we absolutely could ask the question, right? It didn't matter if it was Legos or high-end scotch. If we could ask the question and say, hey, this thing might advance the case a little bit further, we at least had the ability to ask. Whether or not they would say yes or no is a different story. So back in the day when CIA was even less governed and less regulated, man, anything's possible. But I would be hard pressed to ever believe that the CIA would take active action against the U.S. citizen ever, because that is the no-go zone. That is a very dangerous place to be. And you could leave it to some other I.C. partner who already has authorities to wrap the person up, arrest them, defraud them, whatever else, right? You could leave that to FBI.
Mm-hmm. So in an interview, I saw a very short one. I do look around. It's just kind of one of those things like fly paper. And I go out there and say, hey, what's that? Oh, let me poke at that. What's that? You were very concerned or criticizing the fact that they have not released the Kennedy information. And I mean, John F. Kennedy. And I'm sorry, there are a lot of questions about, shall we say, CIA, a president who called his thing jumbo, and other fun elements. Hey, this is entertainment. I got to throw it out there. What are your thoughts on that? Why has it not been released? Are there not some weird questions? Because CIA, here's my issue. MK Ultra, CIA, Cuba, Kennedy, Cuba. Oh, by the way, Cuba has burned the CIA more than any other place in the world. It seems like there's constantly like a double agent away up in the high command. I forgot how many CIA assets in Cuba all got burned and figured out. And apparently they were toying with them for years, like making, we don't know. And they, of course, knew the whole time, because I think they're so insular there. Again, I was around a lot of Cubans, and I learned what totalitarianism really is. And I learned about how, you have a spy in every multi-user apartment. I mean, family members with spy, everything else. So I guess where I'm going is, what are your thoughts about all this? And I figure you're safe. You're later than that.
There's so I know one of the things that you try to focus on in your show is like being able to identify human behavior. Like what's the pattern in human thinking?
Mhm.
And the most important pattern to keep in mind with human thinking is that in the lack of information, in an absence of information, in an information vacuum, people assume the worst. That's what they assume, right? When there's no other information, they will assume the worst. And the worst is defined by their own objective or their own subjective feelings. So when it comes to why hasn't CIA or why hasn't DOD released, why hasn't the government released all the files on the JFK assassination?
Mhm.
That is a lack of information. So what's the natural human response to that lack of information? The worst. And the worst
mine is Hanlon's razor, but it's Hanlon's razor is that okay, to me, most conspiracies, and I'll give you a baseline where I think.
Okay.
To me, most conspiracies are somebody did something, and Hanlon's razor is never ascribed to malice that which can be explained by stupidity. So as an example, let's say you are an agent or I'm an agent, right? And I do some really nasty stuff, okay? I get caught and I go to my supervisor and say, well, you know what? I did it under your command. So you own a piece of this too. So they just quietly just say, get that sorry ass Eric out of here quietly, fired, whatever, just get them out. And then they say, shut up. And they shut it all down. To me, that's behind most conspiracies, is something like that, where the command's ass will swing out there too, or people in charge will swing out. So they actively suppress or cover up things from getting out. So I'm sorry, go with your, tell me the rest. I was just giving you my.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. You said it's Hamlin's razor. Is that what you're calling
Hanlon? Yeah.
Hanlon's razor. So yeah, I would say that that's more accurate than not. It's not that there is some big secret being hidden. It's more likely that there's so much information, nobody knows how to comb through that information. That's what frustrates me about JFK. What frustrates me about JFK is the fact that, whether history is history has happened.
Mm-hmm.
The 25 times 2 classification on all of that information has come and gone. So why are we still sitting on classified files? Is it because some very smart person has combed through those files and come to the conclusion that there is an active risk to current intelligence operations if they release those files? I hope so. But my experience in the United States government, in the military and in the CIA, is that more likely there is nobody who even knows how to find all the files, let alone has the collective history to be able to go back and identify whether or not there is information there of risk or not. So as a result, the net decision is, well, let's just classify it for another 25 years. Overclassification is a major issue in the United States, everything, in the DOD, in CIA, and FBI. We overclassify all the time. It's better to just not let people know it than make the mistake of letting people know one thing they shouldn't know. So the net result is that people start to think that there's an active cover-up. There's not an active cover-up. There's just, your government isn't as efficient or as professional as you would like them to be. That's basically what it boils down to.
Unless it's MK Ultra and that was an active cover-up. So, I mean, it's hard when to say, burn all the documents that are related to it, except they're stupid and they forgot to burn the financial records that were tied to it. So well, then there was the church commission. So
then you've also got to think like how with MK Ultra, right? There was a need, there was a dominant theory at the time that was in the best interest of national security. Mm-hmm. I am one of those people, maybe I'm too pragmatic. If something will keep Americans safe, I don't see any reason to not at least explore or experiment with it. Right? Well, you've got to try.
It depends. It depends on what you're trying. And this is where we get into parameters, because
and that becomes subjective. Once you start getting to parameters, that becomes subjective. And once you make something subjective, now all of a sudden you make it a battle of wills and morals. Wills and morals should not exist in the world of national security. Right?
Again, who are you protecting? The citizens. Right?
Okay.
I mean, the country is made up by citizens. Technically, everybody in the government works for the people, the citizens, the people who vote.
That's actually not true. The people in government do not work for the citizens. Citizens can't vote on their government employees.
No,
Citizens
that gets
can
into
vote.
the deep state, but that's bureaucratic element of it that they can't vote on it. But they can vote on who's appointing the people and who is
Correct.
running the agency. So
Correct.
technically, we're on steps that are removed, but ultimately, the government is supposedly working for the taxpayer. And we get into the details of the deep state and the bureaucratical element of it. And
none of that has to do with the deep state, man. None of that has to do with the deep state.
Deep state's just another term for bureaucracy. Just for the people who've been there for 20 years and they're there through every politician coming and going. It sounds really creepy. So I'm not saying deep state in that sense, but somebody, for example, somebody in the CIA, not necessarily the director, but who gets hired in 1980, and then they just are there going up through the ranks. How many presidents have they worked under? Many.
Right.
That's what the deep state really is. It's just a term.
Okay.
But it's heightened.
I'll go with your definition, but I still think that it is an incorrect assumption to think that the employees of a federal agency work for the people. That's not really true. The employees of a federal agency work for the agency that they're assigned to. Just like the person who works at Google isn't really working for Americans. He's working for Google.
That's two different things, though, because Google is a corporation, and a corporation is not ultimately voted in or in any way. It is part of the marketplace. The government is not part of the government is not part of the marketplace.
The CEO is voted in by the board.
By the board, yes.
Yep,
but
and the board is chosen.
Yeah. Well, the board is chosen by people who are shareholders of it. So again, it's an economic.
Sounds a little bit like bureaucracy, though, right?
Well,
somebody's given the right to vote, and then they cast their vote. And then they have to go with, and then they defer the responsibility of making decisions to the person that they vote in. It's not that different.
Right. But ultimately, just like a cop, just like anybody else, you're supposed to serve the people. And again, you go all the way up the chain. The president is voted in. The president is in charge of all the agencies' heads, who in turn are in charge of everybody below. Okay. In a corporation, I am not in charge of the guy at Google in any way, shape, or form, ever. So it's not really a fair analogy.
Okay. I'll roll with it, but go ahead. So
this is fun. I love it. I mean, I'll get in the weeds. But where was I going? Dude, you froze on me.
That was not intentional. That's just a cycle in the Wi-Fi.
All right.
Google didn't like that conversation.
No, they did not. Well, well, it is YouTube. Let me see. Have I gone yellow yet? I do all the time. So
I thought that was on my end. I saw it cycle, but yeah. So okay, we're way off topic. So you were saying there was something there that we were going down before I distracted us.
Okay, somebody's saying I was busy being wrong. Here you go. You got a fan. Triple XL.
I will also go out there, since we have this small window of time. The Cubans are an incredibly sophisticated intelligence service. I mean, they eat our lunch. Yes, that's true. They eat everybody's lunch. Like they're fantastically talented at what they do, and they are incredibly risk tolerant, and they always have.
Ben, frozen again. Got that rental Wi-Fi. I'm going to go into the chat while we wait for him to come back. Courtney, you are right. Yes, he was flexing the spy skills. What's funny is I know he's listening to me right now, probably going, oh, God, I'm about to say something. Okay. Wow. This is so much fun. Okay. Yeah, it's as long as the light bulb doesn't go dark. Well, it's a frozen image right now, so it's not. Wow. This is entertaining. So chat. What else do we have in here? Okay. Well, that's kind of what I was saying, Danielle, that deep state is unelected bureaucrats. Oh.
Yeah, I think I'm back.
All right. Yeah, twice.
I'm back. That's like the conversation. Shoot.
Yeah, hey, there you go. There we go. Let me see if I can kick the other one out. Okay. Oh, you're still there. Good. Good. I was talking all kinds of things about you, right?
That's all right. So yeah, but my point there is just that you can't judge our success or our failures against somebody as sophisticated as the Cubans, because it's almost like you're assuming that.
So who is stopping him? Is it the Cubans or the CIA? I would think that the Cubans like him because he's celebrating their ability right now. But there you go. You're back.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening here, man. Let me
Is
see
it
if
the CIA or is it the Cubans? I mean, I think the Cubans would like you right now.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna try and change the Wi-Fi that I'm on right now so that we don't keep having that problem. But go ahead.
All right. Frank, you're saying it's the Cubans? I don't know. Cubans are fortifying the stream. Cuban sonic weapons. We're having fun with this. Okay, well, I told you it'd be a free for all, and we're just gonna take it the whole way. Yeah, you're
so I'm trying to switch Wi-Fi on us, man, so that we don't have to keep having this problem. But
okay.
Yeah, but you go ahead. You keep talking, and I'll see if I can't do that.
Yeah, I'm looking in here, and I'm trying to even remember what my subject was. Okay, Raphael, I am so idealistic. Okay, no, I'm saying how things should be. I'm not necessarily idealistic. I'm quite cynical. Somebody had a question for you. If I can find it, May, I don't know. God, there's a lot of questions in here and a lot of chat. Let's see. Okay, maybe it's this. Hopefully you're here long enough. When May switches languages, I automatically think or try to think in the language I'm communicating in. Makes it easier to speak. It takes too much brain power to think in native and then translate. And that was a question.
Again.
When you're that's fine. I'll try to do a better job. When you're speaking another language, you try to think in the language as you're talking versus whatever I'm going to guess English is your baseline language and then translating on the fly.
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's always better to think in the language that you're trying to speak rather than translate. Translation's a second step. It's not always easy. Children do a better job of it than adults because as adults, we're always trained to think about what we're going to say. So what ends up happening is you think about what you're going to say in your native language, and then you translate it into whatever the language is that you're trying to speak in. And then you try and do the reverse when the person responds to you. So for sure, the best practice is to just try to switch gears totally into another language. But sometimes it's not always as easy as it sounds.
Do you find yourself, and I'm just curious because I think of cultural considerations, and do you find yourself acting in a different manner? Like let's say Germans have terms that we don't even have, like Schadenfreude and things like that. And I don't know if you're getting any of this.
Go ahead. I just switched our Wi-Fi. I just switched the Wi-Fi router, so we should be better now.
Okay, I was going to say, do you pick up like a cultural vibes and attitudes when you're switching languages? I'm just curious. And no, you didn't. All righty then. I don't remember where your question was, Gavin. Gavin. Oh, I think it was something about the farm. I see him fly by. There's a lot of questions. This is awesome. Everybody's cooperating. Now I can get to the questions, but of course I don't have a guest to answer them, which is a delight.
Cultural vibe. Go for it, man.
Okay. When you're speaking or thinking another language, do you find yourself picking up cultural attitudes and things like that to help you and find yourself almost change your personality slightly?
Yes, I would say yes, because you always want to integrate yourself into whatever culture you're in. That's just a cultural acuity thing that has nothing to do with operations. There's no faster way to stick out of a foreign culture than by not adopting the foreign culture's idiosyncrasies, including with language. But I think the harder part is remembering that you're on someone else's home field. It's really easy to become just frustrated and agitated by the way a foreign culture works and not realize that you are the guest on their turf, and they're not awkward, they're not odd, you are. So that's the harder part, is to not become agitated by the world around you when you change the world around you.
Okay, that makes sense. And now I did find the question somebody's pointing out. When you're training on the farm, which is very funny. I think I know where the farm is, and I mention it to many CIA officers, and they always get really squirrely when I say the name out loud. So I won't do it officially in public, but it is quite funny, and it's something fruity. But anyway, what was the most unexpected lesson or training or skill that was taught that you never would have expected when you first signed up?
Yeah, so that's a pretty good question. There were a number of skills that I never would have thought. So I think the most surprising thing about the farm was learning how easy it was to manipulate a person. Because you think that manipulation is like hard, right? You would think that manipulation is complex and convoluted, and it's not one size fits all. But at the farm, they teach you a very structured way to be able to take somebody from being a patriot for their country to essentially being a traitor against their country. And it's a very systematic process. Now, granted, R.I.C.E is one way we talk about it. Yeah. You might also hear mice. There's also some academics that call it rascals. There's all sorts of different terminology out there. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
And that sounds very English. Well, I mean, the English did create the CIA. So, you rascal.
And it was written by academics because it's like it's 20% or 50% more complicated than what the actual operators use. But that was the thing that was the most surprising thing to me, because I thought I would be learning, cool skills with like cars and guns and how to use ropes and grappling hooks. And instead there I am, in a PowerPoint ranger, spending days and hours at a time just learning the process of how to derive or how to drive human behavior based on these, just like you were talking about, these 4 core motivations.
Question: am I wrong to say that if you're down to guns and ropes, you failed?
Everything has gone wrong. That is exactly right. Okay. That's what kills me about most people who are like, oh yeah, you must have learned how to do all this stuff. I was like, we learned how to do that as a fail safe when everything else went wrong.
Okay. And can we go into right? I think it's a reward, ideology, coercion, and ego. And I think that's something that people would really love to hear from an expert, and it's a good skill. So help us out.
Yeah, so there's 4 core motivations. I talk about them in my podcast, the Everyday Espionage podcast. If anybody's a podcast listener, or if you like YouTube, I have it on my YouTube channel as well. But essentially, the 4 core motivations they boil down into an acronym called R.I.C.E. R stands for reward, I for ideology, C is for coercion, E is for ego. And what this means is it means that at their base, at every human being's core, there are these 4 motivations always at play. It doesn't mean that one is always stronger. It means that depending on the day or the month or the situation in your life, the 4 of them have different weights, different levers, different leverage, if you will. The R, reward, really just means that. It means anything that someone else gives you to motivate you to do something. Sometimes we do things for pay. Sometimes we do things for compliments. Sometimes we do things just for the promise of a future reward, right? Like one of my favorite things out there is all the people who sign up their mothers or their sisters or their brothers. They give their email addresses and their home addresses so that they can use it as a raffle ticket to win a free car or a free cruise. Right? That's somebody who's essentially being motivated by the promise of a potential future reward to give away personal information about their family. Like it's a super example, in my opinion, of just how powerful reward is for so many people. Ideology, we're taught that ideology is essentially the strongest lever for all people, but not all people have the same ideology. Some people, or some people's ideology about their faith is very, very strong. It might be the strongest thing in their cognitive portfolio. Some people, their ideology about family, or their ideology about fairness, or their ideology about government or politics, right? So there's all these different anchor points for ideology. But what we find, and what you see exemplified across America all the time, is that people do stupid stuff for their ideology. Not even because it has any real world impact. It's just what they believe, and they go to great lengths to protect or support or
well, that's what cults are about. I mean, cults are developing ideology, and then people, to cover their cognitive dissonance, will go right down this primrose path of ridiculousness.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. And that's the power of ideology. So if you can tap a human behavior and put it in line with someone's ideology, you're essentially guaranteeing the behavior, the outcome that you want. Right? If I can somehow convince my child that by brushing his teeth, he's going to get some awesome present, right? Then that's what we do all the time. We try to tempt people with a reward, or we try to tempt people with their ideology. So if he believes that if his ideology is that mom and dad deliver on their promises, then when mom and dad make a promise, he executes his behavior, whether that promise is for a toy or whether that promise is for a trip or whatever else it might be. And that's the same way it works for all of us. If we believe that Americans always do the right thing, then that's how we end up in the Middle East doing all the wrong things according to their culture, and then blaming them for being crazy or being backwards, right? That's ideology. Coercion, the letter C in R.I.C.E, coercion is everything that has to do with all those negative feelings we all hate, but that still work. Fear, shame, guilt, embarrassment, punishment.
Punishment.
Yep.
Fall under coercion, I thought.
That all falls under coercion. Exactly. It's the things that you don't like. It's the things that you don't want. When that is pushed against you, it motivates you to take action. And that's coercion. Now, the problem with coercion is that if someone else is manipulating you with coercion, they only get one shot. Once you identify that someone's trying to manipulate you with coercion, you don't ever trust them again.
Well, no, you'll actively work against them quite often.
Correct.
It's like, okay, you burn me now. Fine. But I will do everything in my power. Some people would do everything to go. So that's a very temporary, got to use it right now, this minute, and you burn that asset or whatever.
Correct. Where it's like, consider in contrast to that ideology, if you can motivate someone by getting them to believe that you have the same ideology, man, you can control that person for decades if you wanted to. And then the last one is E. E is ego. The big thing about ego is, people are motivated by ego, but ego does not mean egotistical. Ego does not mean somebody's proud of themselves and all about themselves and they think they're the best. That's a narcissist. Ego is about people who do what they think they want other people to perceive them as. So Mother Teresa had an ego. Her ego was self-sacrifice and caring for the weak and for the fallen, for the poor. That is an ego-based motivation. If you wanted Mother Teresa to do something that was in line with her ego, then she would do it, right? There's a better chance of her doing it. The same thing is true about your rich business person or your stay-at-home mom or your entrepreneur who's trying to build a business. It's all about understanding how they view themselves and how they want to be viewed, and then driving them in that direction. And there's your 4 core motivations: reward, ideology, coercion, and ego.
Yeah, and ego is really about identity, right? And I wanted to get into this too, because in an earlier interview, you were talking about the Jerry Lee case. But Jerry Lee had not been convicted, so you couldn't really speculate. Now you can say what you want because the guy's been convicted, and you can say, yeah, he was a spy. Yeah, he was doing it because he pled guilty, so I'm going to say he absolutely did it. You were speculating as to how the Chinese would turn him, and I thought ego. That if you're going to go against somebody who is so completely trained, so completely there, then I would think if he didn't like the agency, the way you might recruit them is how that agency never appreciated you, how they promoted everybody around you, and they were all incompetent. And that would be possibly a direction. I was curious your thoughts on whether that was a method against somebody who's really, really well trained, whatever, to feed that.
Yeah. So one of the things that you'll see if you look back at the history of spies in the United States, right? American traitors, people who have betrayed America, what you see is a really strong streak of ego-based motivations that convince these people to spy, because they think that they're special, or they think that that the country owes them something, or they think that they were somehow slighted by FBI or CIA or NSA or DIA, whatever it might be, right? Those are ego-based motivators. And it's very, very easy to target an intelligence officer specifically, because intelligence officers are recruited by the agency because they have a very strong sense of personal identity. They have a strong ego. you need to have a strong ego in order to operate alone with very little support. Somebody who doesn't have a strong set of personal identity, someone who's out there by themselves and isn't full of themselves, that's the kind of person who's likely to just freeze and quit and wait for instructions, or just, miss a meeting, not actually carry out the objective. You need to have that person who, would be a perfect salesperson, or the person who would be, the high school jock in the football team or whatever else. That's the kind of person who can go out there and be on the razor's edge alone, and you can count on them to execute, just because if they don't execute, their ego would take a hit.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense. And that leads me to a couple more questions. And one of my former guests you've actually had on your show, I think for 3 episodes, and that's Jack Barsky.
Jack's
he's one of my favorite guests of all time.
Yeah.
Now, what I thought was so interesting is because I was listening to different interviews with you, and he introduced saying that he heard you in an interview, and he was like, "You think like I do." And by the way, that's no faint praise. He's kind of blunt. He's not going to say that he likes you unless he likes you. That's right. I think the German in him. But I think that was the Mark Valley live drop interview. Am I correct?
Yeah. So Jack's got the benefit of being a foreign operative in the country that he was targeting, right? So that's why he doesn't have to mince words. He doesn't have to try and be, nuanced in what he says. He gets to call it the way he sees it. And what's been awesome about becoming friends with Jack is when you take away that layer of tact and politeness, it's so much easier to get to the core of solutions and questions and strategies and partnerships and whatever else. But yeah, it's really powerful to be able to connect with other intel operators who have the same way of thinking that you do, because we tend to have pragmatic, objective, cold-hearted conversations, and that's not something everybody's open to.
Right. And like earlier, you and I were hashing it out, which I actually love. So it's kind of like, I'm thinking half the chat's going, oh my God, are they going to go at it? But the truth is, listening to you and him and knowing him, there's that streak in both of you. And neither of you is, shall we say, a great team player. And I think you did state at one time, yeah, you like being on a team, but you want to lead the team. And Jack Barsky was talking about how you have to be so independent minded to survive on your own, because you're completely out there on your own. And I'm thinking that you have that same trait, but this led into a problem. And he introduced me to the concept of spies having a 10-year shelf life. And I'm curious your thoughts on that, because you had mentioned having your son and coming to a realization. And when you talked about the realization, what I heard in my head, because I project into everything, is that you saw the CIA as an MLM or a pyramid scheme in a funny way. Yeah.
I guess that's not a bad way to compare it. Yeah. So for those of you who are listening and don't know, Jack Barsky is a KGB agent who I had the pleasure of meeting and interviewing and working with a few times in the past. And Jack's just a brilliant guy in general. You'll see him everywhere. If you look up his name, you'll find him everywhere. He's got a great book,
including on here.
Yeah. But yeah, so that sense of loneliness, that sense of independence, of aloneness, not loneliness. Loneliness and alone are two different things, right? But that sense of independence, of being out there and operating alone, what that tends to do is it's kind of like being on a team. If you've ever been on an independent team, like a boxing team or a cross-country team, or even a band, right? A band is another good example. When you're in a band, you have to do one thing. You play your one part, your one instrument, the way you're supposed to play it, when you're supposed to play it. If you don't play it, the band doesn't sound right. And you're relying on everybody else to do what they need to do, but nobody's passing the ball. Nobody's sharing anything, right? It's not like you're going to pass me your trombone, I'm going to pass you my trumpet. It's not like a football team or a soccer team where you have a shared goal and everybody's kind of fluid in how they execute. Instead, it's very rigid. You execute what you're supposed to execute, and then they execute what they're supposed to execute. And at the end of the day, you win or you lose. That's fencing, that's boxing, that's track and field, that's the Olympics in a lot of ways, right?
Mhm.
When in that world, you need everybody to be a top performer. You don't need someone who's like a soccer team is a great example of where you can have people who are great soccer players, but then you can have people who are bad soccer players or moderate soccer players, mediocre soccer players, but really good teammates. And the whole team becomes stronger. In intelligence, you need everybody to be a top performer. There's no benefit to having a mediocre intelligence officer. You have everybody has to be top notch because they all have to go out there and do their best, and their best matters. But that leads to, like what Jack was saying, a limited shelf life. The same thing happens with Air Force and Navy pilots. A pilot isn't a pilot for their entire 20-year career. A pilot is a pilot for somewhere between 7 and 12 years. And then they have to get out of the cockpit and go do something else. They have to go, become a scheduler. They have to go become a trainer. They have to go become something else that feeds the flying community, the pilot community, but they can't be a pilot. Same thing happens with intel officers. You get 3 to 5 tours on the ground before you essentially owe it back to the next generation. And you got to come back and be a manager. You got to come back and be a trainer. You got to come back and be a bureaucrat. And that's the thing that sucks. Nobody signs up for CIA to spend 15 years behind a desk pushing paper in a crappy polyester suit, driving an hour and a half to get into the main building. Nobody wants that. We want to be alone in the field, doing our own thing, and then telling the world what we did, or telling a very small select group of people what we did. And that leads to people like me, when my 3 to 5 tours are up and CIA doesn't want to play nice anymore with my goals, my personal goals to raise a family, to be a father, then they have to be ready for me to say, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. And CIA is having massive attrition right now. People don't realize it, but CIA is losing about 1 covert intelligence officer a day compared to what they used to. They used to lose like 3 a month. Now they're losing almost 30 a month because people are hitting that stride and they're saying, I don't want to play this game anymore. You can't make me sit behind a desk. I'm going to go try my hand in the civilian world. That's a whole new generation of people.
Is it because some of them too maybe don't believe in the mission? Like, post 9/11, I imagine they had the least attrition and probably the best recruiting time ever.
Right.
And as times have moved on, I'm sorry, however you want to put it, our exit from Afghanistan was embarrassing.
Right. No, you're not wrong. And the amount of people that had dedicated careers to Afghanistan, Iraq, and various one-off missions, counter-narcotics, counter-proliferation, counterintelligence, that were all related to what we were doing in the Middle East. It's hard to keep those people motivated. It's hard to tell them that they have a bright career in government ahead of them when they just watched their 8 years of work get flushed down the drain. And what are they going to say for their next performance review? How are they going to be the ones that get chosen for promotion against someone who's working a sexier target, like the Russians or the Cubans or the Chinese? Right? It's a very, and that's not even counting the people who just have life change. People get married, people have kids, people have parents who become sick. Like that's just part of life. And when CIA doesn't really care about your life, the government doesn't care about your life. You are a servant to the people. So therefore, if you have a life issue, that's nice. We have a policy that gives you, 14 days of bereavement leave, and then you're supposed to be right back in your seat doing your job.
Right. Get over it. You're done.
Yeah.
Yep. You got your time. We thought of you. We took care of you. You had your kid. You had your maternity leave, paternity leave, whatever. Come on, get back.
Right.
Time to move on.
Corporate America doesn't work that way. Corporate America evolves with society, and
I'm in corporate America. Yeah, they do. you could leave, but no, it's pretty
but they can use it as an incentive to hire new talent. Sure. Right? Like there's companies right now, companies all over America are deciding whether or not to make remote work a thing or whether they're going to force people to come back into offices.
Well, fortunately, that's where people have the power, because we had this giant Milgram experiment that went on for the last 16 months, and many corporations absolutely would not let people work remotely. They had no choice. And then they found, well, we lost a little productivity, but we didn't lose that much. and we could shut down 20 offices
And
and not pay facilities for all those. So it forced their hand. It wasn't
correct.
like necessarily forward thinking. Sometimes circumstances can, I think, overcome and help change
Yeah,
different
and
things.
I'm not giving corporations credit for forward thinking, but I am saying it. I want people to be forward thinking, and if people are
Mhm.
thinking right now, and I've run into a number of folks who seem to think this way, like, oh, companies are going to have to create these work from home jobs. There's going to be a whole new rush of remote jobs, and the world is going to be so much better for me to have my kids and for me to do whatever else, right? Like, if that's the case, yeah,
I have fans, man.
lots of support.
I'm telling you.
If that's the case, then I will be pleasantly surprised. What I think will happen is that companies will create more remote positions. Companies will create partial 2 days in the office, 3 days at home kind of schedules, but they will
Mhm.
also start to pay people significantly less. And the reason they'll do that is because if you don't like it, somebody else out there will take that job, because now
Well, they can.
there's
Well,
going to be
right
the
now
open
there's a
market.
shortage. Well, and that's the thing. It depends. I mean, they're having trouble filling all the positions at the moment, so labor has the power to where they're going to have to keep the wages decent.
Well, I
Once
mean,
the jobs are filled, then yeah,
yeah,
so it's
this,
talent. It's that's market, and that's good.
yeah,
It's a
everything's,
balance.
and I agree. It's good. I just the reason I think it's important to keep in mind is because if the days of a six-figure stay-at-home job, those days are not going to last for very long, because companies are going to know that they can pay less and less, and there will
Mhm.
always be people willing to take less money to have no commute and stay home. And the people who want the
Sure.
bigger paychecks are going to have to be the people who are willing to go into an office and go back to the same old game.
Yeah, and that could be. And but then that's one of those too. How much is it worth? I mean, somebody who's staying at home for less than six figures, they can live with one car in their family. They can, there's a lot of benefits too. So
Right? It's all
it's
about
always a compromise.
it goes back to that core motivation. It goes back to those four letters, right? R-I.C.E. Is your ego one where you have to be the head dog, you have to be a big dog in the company, or is the reward of salary so powerful to you, or is your ideology one where you're like, I want to be able to hang out with my kids, I want to be able to stay home with my dog, I want to be able to avoid people, and just I'm a proud introvert and I just want to stay in my little office and just do what I'm supposed to do from home and never have anyone bother me. Either way, whatever your motivation is, if you find the right combination, you'll be successful.
Well, perfect. Now, okay, here's a quick question before I slide out to the end. What do you think of the recent recruiting ads for the CIA?
They are, oh man, I try not to say bad things about CIA, but I think that their whole recruiting drive has just been just like embarrassing. Their whole like twist towards millennials, and like it's almost stereotypically insulting, right?
Do you
Where
say
they're like,
cringe?
yeah, it's like we're gonna make ourselves look a little bit more like, oh, just you can almost, I can't even finish a sentence, I'm so disgusted. You
The pandering.
you can set, yes, you can set your watch to what minority they're going to show on the next screen, right? Here's an Asian, here's an African American, here's somebody in a wheelchair, here's a female,
My
here's a
boss has a
Mexican.
rainbow on his badge, and I felt so good.
Yes, and it's like, do you really think that the future heroes of America are so shallow that they're going to choose you because you show them a picture of a rainbow flag, or you show them a picture of a guy named Gonzalez? Do you really think that's going to bring people in the door? Or do you think that's just going to bring in people who have no other issue in their life except like their ethnicity and their personal sexuality? Like, it's ridiculous, because people are not that shallow, and the people who are that shallow are not going to be the people who shape the future of Americans' national security. But for whatever reason, right now CIA is on this binge where they need to change their branding, they need to look like a bad 1980s video game, and they need to like have a nice turnstile of ethnic diversity. Ridiculous.
Oh, it does crack me up. Okay, I know we're definitely out of time. I had one off the wall last question, because I wanted to get into social capital and your thesis on that, but that'd take a while.
I'll stay with you as long as you want, man, because I know that I had some Wi-Fi issues. So don't feel the need to jump off unless I'm intimidating you.
Yeah, I don't know that bulb. Here, hide the bulb. No. Anyway, okay. Well, let's talk about that, because I think that people can get a lot of benefit out of you. In other interviews, have talked about social capital, and you seem to have kind of a thesis how social capital is what runs all relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a thesis. I would, but if you want to call it a thesis, we can.
Or observation or whatever.
It's a basic human tenet, right? So social capital is just like capital. We all know how currency works. I have money, you have money. I want something you have. I give you money to get what you have. If we don't have money, we have a trade and barter system, right? That trade and barter system is essentially a impromptu or informal currency. You have something of value, I have something of value, and we think that the two things are of equal value. So social capital is the exact same thing, only it's essentially based on a sense of obligation as currency. So I talk to you, I show interest in you. The more interest I show in you, the more you almost feel a sense of obligation to show interest back in me. It's the exact same thing. If I were to let you borrow $5, you would, in your head, you would say, I've got to return this $5. I've just told you that I think you're a great dad and a wonderful man. And you're like, I've got to find some way to return this social capital back to Andy to make him feel good too. So when you're in a relationship, this happens all the time, whether you're on the first date or whether you've been married for 30 years. If the person across the table from you insults you and, calls you a lazy bum and you need to hang out with your kids and whatever else, they are degrading you. They're draining social capital from you. And then you feel the need to balance the debt. So then you attack them or you accuse them or you bring everybody down again. It's the same thing as what happens with money. And then similarly, if the person across the table from you says, I think you're so funny and I think you're so sweet and I think you're so kind, you feel obligated to find 3 nice things to say about them. So in this exchange of obligation, through conversation, through spending time together, gifting each other, whatever else it might be, teaching each other, training each other. In all of these relationships, whether they're personal or romantic, you have this exchange of social capital. The problem happens when people get themselves into a relationship where they're on only one side, specifically on the giving side of social capital. And they give and they give and they give and they don't get anything in return. That's where things start to fall apart. And the reason that happens is because some people just end up investing their capital in the wrong person, especially in romantic relationships, but also in personal and professional relationships. And you're giving and you're giving and you're giving, and the other person is taking and taking and taking, and you're just running out of currency. You're running out of capital. It doesn't come back. The other thing that's a common mistake is people don't realize that sometimes you just have to ask for what you want in return, because that sense of obligation that comes from currency, that comes from the exchange of social capital, that is building up a subconscious behavioral lever where they want to deliver on they want to close off that obligation. They want to tie off the end, put a period on the end of the sentence. So if you're giving and giving and giving, and all you're really hoping for is that someday they're going to give you a job opportunity, they're going to give you an introduction, or they're going to give you whatever, sometimes you just have to ask. It's like, I've given and given and given, and now it's time for me to say, hey, can you introduce me to that CEO that you play golf with? And what you'll be surprised at is that sometimes just asking the question is enough to get the person to act on the obligation. They feel the pressure. They just don't have
or maybe they never thought of it. I mean, because we're selfish. We are generally selfish creatures, and we're like, oh, you gave me that. Well, thank you. Oh, thank you. And then, I don't necessarily think about this particular thing. Like maybe you want to be interviewed by somebody I know.
Right.
And well, I'm busy thinking of my new shows and all that. You did something for me. Thank you. Cool. Whatever. And then you say, hey, could you introduce me to such and such? Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And it's just, I never really thought of it. And on that, I don't know how this would fall into it, but have you heard of the Ben Franklin effect?
I've not heard of the Ben Franklin effect.
It's kind of tying into it, but it's almost a reverse thing. Like Ben Franklin had another legislature who hated his guts. And he established a relationship and overcame it by approaching the person and saying, I understand you're really well read and you have this particular rare book. Is it possible I could borrow that?
Mm.
And that person lent it to him, but because he saw him at that point as worthy of lending that book, it changed the whole paradigm. And I think that's almost like the opposite of what I'm saying. But so some of it is a little odd. Like if somebody offers you something, you can get so worried about the capital and how much you give or don't give. Sometimes you just need to say, yeah, thank you so much, because it's an
Mm.
insult to them to not take what they're offering. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. The thing to keep in mind, the 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 core concept with social capital is just to recognize that every exchange
It's
is
about.
an exchange of capital. Yeah, it's a balance book, right?
Mhm.
And then just like real currency, the longer that the balance is uneven,
Right.
the more that the balance is going to start to decrease, because currency loses value just like social capital loses value. So today, if I ask you for a favor at the end of this interview, the
Mm.
chances of you delivering on that favor are much higher than if I wait 2 months before I ask you for a favor,
Oh, sure.
because the capital, the value has decreased. So that's all that it matters. Like for me, in a very I'm not that smart. I'm just an operator, and we work in a world of strong, objective, as close to absolutes as we can, and that's where it stands for me. Every
Oh, perfect.
conversation, every exchange is an obligation, and I can use it in my best interest if I use it quickly.
Well, perfect. And that's a great point for our last question, because I'm not that smart. So
Just two dummies on YouTube, man. That's my
there you
favorite
go.
way to be.
What is the question that I should have asked you and didn't?
Oh, that's an interesting question right there. Um, I don't. I'm on the spot, man. I don't know. A question that you should have asked and didn't ask.
Right.
I don't have
Because
it.
I don't know if I've asked you anything original. You answer questions all the time. And I know that you're going, nobody ever asked me this.
You know,
There's a couple of those.
I do sometimes wonder why nobody ever asks me what I wanted to be growing up. They're always
Mm.
like, "Oh, you were a spy. That must have been what you wanted to be when you were growing up." And I was like, "No, spying was never something I wanted to be when I was growing up. When I was growing up, all I really wanted to be was a musician. I was,
Really?
and I suck at music, man. I'm bad at music. If you want to, I mean, I'm horrible at the guitar. I'm even worse at the ukulele. It's just embarrassing. But man, I love music. Music is one of those art forms that actually speaks to my soul. So
Mhm.
all I wanted to do was like, I wanted to be a musician, and I tried and I tried, and it never worked out. And my dad told me how bad I was at music and that it would never work out, and that's why I needed to go do something else.
And that's your band analogy from earlier. And I was going to pile on to that. I don't know if it'd help in the future, but when you were saying a short-lived time, I was thinking supergroups.
Ah,
When you have all the top players in the world and they're all on the same stage,
yep,
those bands don't last too long.
it's true. Yeah, it's true. It's the same thing with your pro sports athletes. All the best athletes in the world in one team, not enough to go around.
Nope, too many egos. Well, sir, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I hope I didn't make you too crazy arguing out corporate versus bureaucratic nonsense. And I hope we get to argue about that in the future, because it's fun. Everybody check you out. Everydayspy.com. I would say, is that the best central place to find everything, your courses, whatnot? Heard
Yeah,
you
if
had
you
a
go,
book, but I couldn't find it.
yeah, it should be on the homepage. My homepage is I am a reforming or whatever. I am a recovering spy trying to figure out business. So I'm
That's
not
the
very
other author.
efficient. Yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah. So if you go to
you have
Everyday
to
Spy,
promote. You went from being stealthy to now having to self promote.
yeah. Everydayspy.com, you'll find all of my stuff. Everyday Espionage podcast is probably my most fun project that I have going on. And I've got spy games out there. I've got books out there. I've got courses out there. And if you really feel adventurous, you can come spend a day or a weekend with me doing a spy op in the field. I just had 3 people out here with me in Gainesville, Florida, doing a tactical shooting, driving in disguise course. I've got a 1-day Tradecraft course coming up in October. And the best way to
Ah,
find that is just join the newsletter or send me an email, and I'll get you all the details.
awesome. I'll be talking to you here in just a minute, because I think I can introduce you to somebody who will hire you out for that.
Nice.
Thank you so much.